The United States is never going to pay this bill. There's not a chance. I guess you can roll it over. And right now at zero interest, I guess it's not a big cost of interest. But as we talked about yesterday, when that interest rate goes to historic norms, like 6%, now we're looking at 850, 900 billion in interest. And you're running out of money to pay Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security in the near term. And where do you come up with almost another trillion just for interest on the debt? And frankly,
folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 2919 East Broadway. This is a special edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you live on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download all of our live local shows, including Solomon on Blast and the Jim Parisi Show, and the Jake Feinberg Show as well. We are full-on extraterrestrial radio, streaming worldwide, and we thank you so much for making us part of your day today. And without further ado, I want to bring in a legend of modern music. He's a guy that he knows that there were spirits before him and spirits long after him, but he's always kept himself humble in the sense that the music has always been above any one person. That in itself has led to his success over years of constant creation. Johnny Mathis, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Bless your heart. Thanks so much.
Nice to talk to you, my friend. Hey, I wanted to just start by asking you, I see in this world that we live in now, it is all interconnected, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on what you believe are the best qualities of leadership and why.
Wow. Well, of course, the most difficult thing about people who want to lead is to make sure that what they're talking about is truthful, and it's very difficult to find those things out sometimes. But yeah, it's and also choose what you're concerned about wisely. I don't know. I always ask my dad because he was my best pal, and he was the person that I knew who would not harm me. So that's the only example, probably, that's worth anything from me.
Let me ask you though, because I look at Barack Obama. I'm 38 years old, Johnny, and I'm a big fan of him. And I think he's a good leader. Nobody's perfect. And I wonder why. Has it always been this way? Even when you were walking down Broadway, I mean, I just transcribed my interview with George Clinton from Parliament, and he's talking about when he was in the Brill Building and you were walking down Broadway, and so was Dionne Warwick and all these cats. But has it always been that we have tried to vilify the people that we call leaders? This is what's astonishing to me, is that he is our leader, but yet he is not. He is torn down. And I'm just curious, in your memory, the way you look at our sociologically our society, have we always? Why do we treat leaders? Why do we treat them badly? Is it envy? Is it jealousy? Or is that always just the way it has been through eternity?
Oh gosh, being that person that always wondered about it. Why some people would love you and others would vilify you. Yeah, but that's just the way it is. Anyone who's been in the public spotlight will tell you the same thing, I'm sure. So the thing is that what you carry in your heart is the most important thing. And as long as that's strong and firm, you can live with maybe some indifference or some negativity about yourself because you know the truth. And unfortunately, that's all you can do.
Can you talk about a time, in your early career where you were facing adversity? Maybe you were struggling, you hadn't totally found your voice yet, but ultimately you stayed true to yourself. You weren't shaken to your core because you were in the arts and you were in music for the right reasons, and how you overcame that adversity and how it made you stronger.
Well, the catalyst to my career has always been my dad. My dad raised 7 children. He and my mom. I mentioned my dad because he was a singer, played the piano, and had a little insight into what I was kind of going to do the rest of my life. But he was my best pal. I went fishing with him. He wouldn't take me hunting. He thought that was kind of cruel, but he did it anyway because we always ate the food that he brought back home.
I love it.
But anyway, Dad was that way. He, he shielded me from all things of that nature. But of course, he was my best pal in the world. We were like, he was like my big brother, but he was my dad. And Pop, right from the beginning, said, "Well, son, maybe we should think about taking some lessons." Because I sang with him. He played the piano and sang me all these little old songs that he knew. Some of them were from the area of country and western, because he was raised in Texas. So I knew a lot of country and western songs, which I surprised a lot of my buddies to be later on in life when they said, "How do you know that song? You're country." But my dad was the influence in every single thing I've done over the years. And while I'm rambling on and on like this, I forgot your question.
It's okay. No, what I dig. I dig the fact that I love the fact that you had a really good. You respected your dad. But I mean, when you were, I just want to talk about a time when you could have walked away from you. If there was a point in time where you could have walked away because you were shaken a little bit, you had to overcome some adversity, but because you were in it for the right reasons and you were accessing your true nature, that you stuck with it, you dug down deep, and you overcame it. If you could share that with the audience.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I was ever conscious of was I had just finished a performance at a little kind of crazy place that this lady turned into a night spot in San Francisco. And I'd gotten a telegram from George Avakian, who was at the time in charge of jazz music at Columbia Records. And he said, I think it was something like, have found a young kid who could go all the way, send blank contract, something to that nature. Mm. So I was all just over the moon about it. I was 18 years old at the time. And somebody told me that they had read in the newspaper, because I was a local guy. I'd been around for a while, and I was kind of newsworthy, I guess, in some aspects of it. And somebody read the newspaper that someone wrote a letter saying to me, John Mathis, don't be foolish because you haven't got what it takes to be a professional singer. Don't leave your hometown. Keep doing what you're doing in school and what have you. And so that was the only kind of negative thing that I've ever had that was, that I heard of. I'm sure there were probably others, but that was one that I always kind of chuckled about, because I said, well, they're not giving me a chance yet. I haven't had a chance to fail. But then I got a little taste of what it was going to be like as far as my being in the public eye as opposed to a private person. And that kind of startled me because I was very young, and I think I was very hurt by it. But my father, of course, was saying, "Oh, son, please, don't even think about it." But that was.
I did. No, that's awesome. Because because that bothers you. But I think to me, on my journey, people can get on you, but that's just a sign that they're insecure and they're a little bit worried about you. To me, that they're nervous. And so they're trying to knock you, see how strong you actually are. And You kind of
and when you're the person, that's that's the that they're aiming at. It's kind of a process that really has to be learned and has to be somehow made. Somehow you got to figure out what is important to listen to and what isn't. And of course, when you're a kid like I was, the only thing that I had to fall back on was my dad. My dad was always with me, and he blunted all of the negativity that was to come along. And there was quite a bit of it, but it was all so personal and so pithy that it just if I had been a little bit different, but I had a good kind of feeling about what I was doing because I had studied. I had gone to my teacher not knowing anything about music or at least voice production. And the minute I got a handle on how to manipulate my voice, I lost a lot of my hesitancy about what was going to happen to me later on because I wasn't afraid. I said, well, I can do this. I know I can do this. And that was the thing that supposedly was going to make me a little positive or a little negative. So I was in good hands when I was always around my dad.
Talking to Johnny Mathis here on the Jake Feinberg Show, and I've been digging through a lot of archival video stuff online, and I noticed this collaboration with you and Stan Getz from the early '70s, and I said I didn't know those guys collaborated at all, and I was like, but then then doing research on you and knowing how steeped you were in the street music of jazz, being at the Blackhawk and being. I mean, I can't even believe that you and Merl Saunders were such great friends. I mean, that to me, it just warms my heart. But when did Stan Getz? When did you first cross paths with Stan?
Well, of course, hanging out with Merl, he was my entree into jazz because my voice teacher, the only thing I ever did was sing classical songs. But this Blackhawk was a mecca of people like Cal Jada, Oscar Peterson, Ella, Art Tatum, Earl Garner. All of these people were there week after week after week. So I was accustomed to, to going down and sitting in the back at some of the rehearsals and what have you. But with Stan Getz, he was. Everybody kind of knew his background and how he had overcome some obstacles with, substance abuse and what have you. So people like that were always the substance abuse was always bigger than the person who overcame it. So it always drew a strange crowd. But when I heard him play, I said, "Oh my God, this man is amazing."
Hold on, I want to go back for a second.
Okay.
When you talk about, there was a seminal moment in the mid '50s with Stan when he was arrested for holding up a drugstore for trying to get drugs, and is that what you're referring to? Because I wasn't sure that reputation had already come with him when you.
Yeah. We later on, the person who owned the Blackhawk, Helen and John Noga, and also I forgot her partner's name. Well, Helen became my business manager.
Right.
And so I always got not only, the surface kind of information about the people who were appearing there, but I also got their background. And, of course, they were always a little bit afraid that they were going to have to deal with unscrupulous people if someone had been, connected with drugs in any other way. And so later on I found out a lot about, the hesitancy they had about, booking somebody like Stan Getz, knowing his background. But of course, once I heard him play, I just, oh my God, this is a giant. And the next time I saw him was at, I was singing at on a television show in Los Angeles for somebody who evidently was a friend of mine, because it was a daytime television show, and that's about the only time I would be useful to someone. And Stan was a guest, and they asked me if I'd sing a song with him, and we chose the song that he did with Astrud Gilberto, and
Girl from Ipanema.
Girl from Ipanema. And all of my wonderful, wonderful feelings about Stan Getz went crashing, because not only was he brilliant and he played great, I thought I sang, because I was in reverence with him, and I thought I sang well. We only did one song. But evidently I kind of improvised a little too much, and he wanted me probably to stick to the meter in the bossa nova. That's the only reason that I can think that he acted the way he did. And then later on, I found out that no, maybe he wasn't mad at me, because when he played, he looked like he was just so angry, and he would just dig into his horn and just and frown. So I saw him much later on, when he was in fact playing with Astrud, and I said, "Oh no, that's the way he looks when he plays."
This is very important, Johnny, because that was the quote unquote alpha state. When he was staring with such focus. You interpreted it as him being irritated, but not so, right?
Right, absolutely. Wow. And of course, that's one of the examples of people who misconstrue, anyone who's in the limelight. You just never know.
So did you and Stan? I'm curious. The Blackhawk, they knew Stan's reputation preceded him. They were worried that he was going to maybe be a mess on the bandstand, or he'd bring in some riffraff. Why were they worried to even bring him in to begin with?
I think they were concerned about their license being in jeopardy, hiring someone who was a known drug addict. A lot of reasons that I found out much later, because this lady who became my manager was a saloon owner, most of her life up until then, and that's what they worried about. They didn't worry about the people in this tiny little jazz club, because people always came. It didn't matter who was there, because who was there was always someone who was quite wonderful musically. No, this was always about what was going to happen, on stage, not about anything other than that.
No, absolutely. I dig. For the audience listening all over the world, can you talk about, in your mind, if you consider Stan to be one of these transcendent musical figures, not just over half a century, but we're talking, maybe over 100, a full century, a guy who I would like to get your take, being somewhat of a star while Stan was a star. You guys were on interesting similar tracks, and just in your mind, his significance in music history.
He was someone used that term, and I thought that was the best compliment I could have ever gotten. He was unique, and that is so important, I think, to anybody who wants to excel in anything that they do, is to be told that they're unique, special. only one of a kind, that sort of thing. And that's, of course, the way that I felt about Stan Getz and most of the people whomever I've spoken to. And, of course, the only thing that anybody ever feels bad about was the fact, that he had difficulty in his personal life because of his drug addiction. But, of course, that was then. And it was so much, it was people didn't realize that, perhaps the drugs were, you needed help as opposed to you were doing something bad. It wasn't bad. It was just unfortunate. And he never went out and hurt anybody. He only hurt himself. So,
there was a lot of carnage when he lived up at that Gershwin mansion. I mean, this is fascinating to me. After the daytime television show where you sang "Girl," was that the one that was on video? I can't remember. I was watching this thing with you and him on video from the early '70s. Did you ever collaborate with him after that?
No, just once. I was scared. I was scared of him.
He was in it. Yeah, he was in it. He had a mood disorder too that was never diagnosed. And, and that coupled with the substance abuse made him kind of a Jekyll and Hyde character. I want to go back, Johnny. I need you to paint this picture because, Merl Saunders to me, the guy crossed over and was doing a lot of amazing stuff in the 70s, but I want to go back to this time. You're telling me that Merl introduced you to, did he teach you, it wasn't just the songbook, but we're talking about jazz changes, jazz chords, presence on the bandstand. How did he hip you to the style of jazz?
Well, he did. Merl was my pal. I met Merl when I was 13, and that's when we started working together. He lived 4 blocks away from me in San Francisco.
In the Haight? In the original Haight?
Yep.
That was a very different. Can you paint the picture of that Haight? That Haight.
That what?
The Haight Street. The Haight. Can you talk about what it looked like at that time before obviously you moved to L.A., but before the explosion in the Summer of Love? What did Haight Street look like at that time?
Well, it was a lovely, wonderful little San Francisco neighborhood with I remember right across the street was the not the YMCA, but the Boys Club. And that's where we went over to play pool, to swim, to meet and maybe do exercises and what have you. I always remember that. Merl was very fortunate. He grew up in a big house with a piano. His mom and dad evidently had good jobs, so they could afford it. And when I met, I can't remember how we met, but at the age of 13, I was gung-ho to do something with this music that I had been studying with my vocal teacher. And what better thing than to hook up with somebody who goes on stage. And so that was kind of interesting to me. I'd never been on stage before, and Merl was always playing at dances, and that's how we got started. They would pay us maybe a couple of bucks a piece or $5, and give it to Merl, and Merl would divvy it up according to whether who knows. He might have kept 10 for himself and gave us 5, but he was the leader, so we didn't feel bad about that.
Who was in the band? Jimmy Daniels? Who else was in this band?
There was the vibe player was very important because he had to play the changes that Merl played on the piano.
What was his name?
Oh God, Raymond. Raymond something.
And this was, just to be clear, this was well before Merl went into the army in Germany, right? I mean, you guys.
Oh gosh, yes.
This is unbelievable. You were playing was Merl playing Hammond organ or piano?
Merl was playing piano, the
This
Hammond
is
organ.
unbelievable. Johnny Mathis on continue, please. He had it. So the vibes player had to play the changes. And did you have a trap set or no?
No, we were strictly. There's a bass player
This is awesome.
who was absolutely wonderful. I don't think he could read. He just sort of like would watch Merl's fingers and sort of play something of the. We were just trying to find out what was necessary, and that's what we had to learn. We had to learn it fast too. We didn't know quite what we were doing, but in order to do what we were doing together, some of us had to really, really stretch our musical abilities at the time, and that's where I remember the bass player came in. He wasn't very knowledgeable about music, but we were all working our tails off, and so nobody had a one-up on one another. We were just all in it together. And then I remember there was a wonderful girl who came along, Jean. Jean. Oh, she called me not too long ago. She unfortunately fell on bad times. But anyway, we were all helping one another. And the thing that I remember is that was the most, probably for a lot of reasons, that was the most important element of my singing career that I learned very early on is singing in front of people as opposed to just singing with the guys. Boy, you're when the adrenaline starts going and people are looking at you and they're standing right next to you and you're trying to sing, it's kind of nerve-wracking.
Oh, I mean, and were you doing like doo-wop, or were you doing jazz standards? Like, what were you guys playing on the bandstand?
We were doing really, really grown-up stuff. We didn't fool with anything like hip bebop or anything like that. No, we were doing melodious things. So Merl could play these beautiful changes, and I could sing, and all of the songs came from really great composers, because the only people we listened to were Eckstein, Billie Holiday, and these were the songs that we were singing, and that's what we were doing, because mostly we played dances, and when you play dances, you play these ballads where the guys can hug the girls. You don't play jitterbug or stuff like that.
Right? No, I mean, it was dance music. I mean, Jader's music, the Afro-Cuban stuff. I mean, I think that you were probably there were so many great regional hotbeds of activity of music before interconnection, and I've coveted this on my show for 5 years, and I've been woodshedding on it, and San Francisco was that pre-60 San Francisco was just, it was danceable. You could tap your foot to it. And there were just so many places to play. Going back to Stan for 1 second, you said the culminating factor, the seminal factor about Stan Getz was he was unique. Specifically, in what ways? I mean, he was a melodic improviser. He had great time feel. The tone that came out of his horn, just the sound that came out of his horn was incredible. It was so lyrical. You could write lyrics to some of the stuff. Can you talk from Johnny Mathis's point of view, what made Stan Getz unique to the music world?
Well, he sang when he played. His sound was beautiful, of course, but he always played melodious things, or at least that's what I thought. Was coming out of his horn. Beautiful melodies, and even his improvisations sounded melodic. A lot of the stuff, you couldn't follow if you weren't, a musician. But with him, it always reminded me of Prez. You know, it was that pretty, and he didn't make an effort to do anything other than play that way. I think he might have been influenced by Prez.
Big time.
You know?
Well, no, what you were talking about with the bass player before, or maybe the vibes player, the guy who was going on strictly feel, had no academic musical background. That was Stan. Stan was on the road with Teagarden in 9th grade. He never had any musical upbringing either. He could never explain where he got his sound from. Isn't that the magic of music, though, a little bit, Johnny? I mean, isn't it fair to say that people have come up to you and said, "How did you do that? How did you get to that octave? How did you do?" And a lot of it's a talk with the spirits, right?
If they only knew how dumb we all are. we find something to latch on to, and then we figure out whether we can do it or not. Maybe I don't like that because I can't do it. Maybe I like something else because I can do that better. And that kind of the reason that I sing the way that I do is because my dad sang that way, and I'm his son, and I got the same genes, and I like the same music that he likes, and I would love to sing like my dad. I always wanted to, and so I didn't have any problem with that because the people that eventually would pay me to sing, my record company, they liked that. Because they didn't have anybody like that. They had people who were just coming up, they had a big country and western group of singers that I loved. I hung out with them a lot. But then, of course, I met Bob. Bob. He was on the staff there, unpaid, I think, by Georgia Valkin, and he's the one who used to take me to the studio when I was not singing, and we would listen to Miles. Of course, Miles was there. He was the biggest jazz star at Columbia when I was going there. But of course, they had these wonderful orchestras.
Stan Kenton and
well, they mostly
not Columbia.
That's Ellington, mostly Ellington.
Ellington, that's right. Ellington, absolutely.
Yeah. George Valkin was a big Ellington fan, and after years and years later, when I thought about it, I said, well, I was lucky because George liked my singing. If he didn't like your singing, he wouldn't bother to have you on the record label.
I think Charles Lloyd was with him for a minute too.
Yes.
In 2 minutes, Johnny, before I really would like to do part 2 with you down the road. You've been such an inspiration for me and so many others. But you just give what's your concept of love?
Well, usually it involves the empathy that you feel for everything, usually, mostly music, emotional feelings with other people, and it overrides everything. It overrides hate, unkindness. It overrides everything. And it's something that you can't control.
Well, Johnny, I really had a ball with you, man, and look forward to part 2. I'd love to talk to you more about the San Francisco, that burgeoning scene. It was so vibrant, and I know it catapulted you to big things, and just knowing that you and Merl were just swinging on the bandstand just makes me smile, man. I really
oh man, I'm so glad you knew. You're talking about Merl. He was such a catalyst in my life, and always was. Even after things got good for both of us, we always hung out, and I just can't believe that that things happened the way they did with him and I. My little brother, Michael, eventually got to meet Earl, and they became pals, too. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, Jake, thanks for calling. I enjoyed talking to you, and if you...
Yeah, we're going to do it. I'm going to reach out, and we'll set up another time before the end of the year. I'd love to talk to you about Merl and the whole thing. It's beautiful.
Good.
All right,
okay.
man. Be good.
Bye.
Bye, buddy. Just heard from the legendary Johnny Mathis, and we'll be right back with Eric Krasnow.